At some point, most people face some version of this decision: stay in the life they've built or leave for the life they think they could have instead. The job, the relationship, the city, the version of themselves that years of accumulated choices have quietly constructed. Stay or go. And almost nobody makes this decision well, not because they aren't smart enough, not because they haven't read enough, not because they lack the willpower to follow through once they've decided. They make it badly because the decision itself has a structure that resists being made well, using the tools most people bring to it. Understanding that structure is the actual prerequisite. Everything else people reach for first, gut feelings, pro and con lists, advice from friends who've never lived inside the specific version of the choice, is downstream of a deeper problem almost nobody names directly. Why this isn't like your other decisions. Most decision-making advice, and most decision-making research, for that matter, is built around what researchers call small world problems. Choices with knowable options, stable preferences, and calculable outcomes. Which flight to book, which brand of blender to buy, standard decision theory handles these reasonably well. Because the person doing the choosing exists unchanged on both sides of the decision, simply picking between known outcomes. Psychologist Shahar Hechtlinger, along with colleagues Christine Schulze, Christina Leuker, and Ralph Hertwig at the Max Planck Institute for Human Development, published research directly addressing why this standard framework collapses for decisions like the one this video is about. Their work on what they term transformative life decisions, choices like emigrating, ending a marriage, or leaving a career, argues that these decisions have a set of structural properties that make them categorically different from ordinary choices. Not just harder versions of the same thing. Chief among these properties is that the person making the decision doesn't remain fixed across it. Leaving doesn't just change your circumstances, it changes who you are in ways that can't be fully known in advance, precisely because the person who would know what it's actually like to have left doesn't exist yet, and won't exist until after the decision has already been made and can no longer be unmade. This framework draws on philosopher L.A. Paul's earlier work on transformative experience, and Hechtlinger and colleagues' research extends it into a testable psychological model, identifying that these decisions typically involve several forces operating simultaneously: uncertain future experience, potential irreversibility, and what their research terms conflicting cues, meaning the decision maker is often pulled by genuinely incompatible considerations at once, rather than facing a single clean trade-off. This is worth stating plainly because it directly explains the frustration built into the hook of this video. It isn't that you're failing to find the right pro and con list. It's that a pro and con list assumes a stable person, weighing stable, knowable outcomes. And a transformative decision violates that assumption on every count simultaneously. The forces operating on you at once. Because these decisions can't be reduced to a single clean variable, it helps to name the specific forces that tend to be pulling at once. Since several of them have already been documented individually across the research this channel has covered. There's the comparison Tabot and Kelly's social exchange theory describes, weighing the current situation not against an abstract ideal, but against a specific, honestly assessed alternative, and the well-documented tendency to compare a real textured present against an idealized, untested, imagined future, rather than against anything the future has actually been tested to deliver. There's the asymmetry in how loss gets weighted. The years already invested, the effort already spent, which shouldn't rationally bear on a forward-looking decision, but which Russ Bolt's investment model shows genuinely does predict commitment, a real variable, not simply a bias to be argued away. There's the peak-end distortion from Kahneman's research on experienced evaluation, the tendency to judge an entire situation by its most recent or most intense moment, rather than by its honest average, which can make a fundamentally workable situation feel unbearable in the specific window when the decision is actually being made. There's Gottman's distinction between solvable and perpetual problems. The question of whether the pain driving the decision is actually pointing toward incompatibility or toward a durable difference that simply hasn't yet been learned to live alongside, and running underneath all of it is the specific asymmetry in anticipated regret that Gilovich and Medvek's research documents, The tendency in the moment of deciding to overweight the vivid, immediate cost of action gone wrong, and to underweight the quieter, compounding cost of an inaction that never resolves into anything you can point to and explain. None of these forces operates in isolation, and that's precisely the problem. A transformative decision asks you to weigh all of them simultaneously. Using a version of yourself that the decision itself is already in the process of changing, which is exactly the structural bind Hechtlinger's research is describing. The decision you're already making by not making it. There's a specific distortion worth naming directly because it explains why so many of these decisions never actually get made at all in the deliberate sense, and instead simply resolve themselves through inertia over months or years. Staying is not a neutral default state that exists prior to a decision. It is, functionally, a decision. Renewed every single day, it isn't actively reconsidered whether or not it's ever been consciously chosen. This matters because the felt experience of not deciding, waiting for more clarity, waiting to feel more certain, waiting for the right moment, feels like a pause, a suspension of the choice. It isn't. Every day inside that felt pause, the stay option is winning by default, accumulating more sunk investment, more entrenched routine, more of exactly the variables that Rusbult's research shows make leaving progressively harder, regardless of whether staying was ever actually reconsidered on its own merits. The absence of a decision is not neutral ground. It is the decision, made silently by the version of you least equipped to make it deliberately. What an honest framework actually looks like, given that the standard tools fail here specifically, and Hechtlinger's research is explicit that they do. What does an honest approach to a transformative stay or leave decision actually involve? Understanding that it isn't going to produce the clean certainty a smaller decision might. It starts with accurately naming which of the forces above are actually driving the felt urgency right now, rather than treating the situation as a single undifferentiated ache. Is this a peak-end distortion? A recent bad stretch making an otherwise workable average feel unbearable? Is this Gottman's solvable versus perpetual distinction? Unresolved, rather than genuinely unresolvable? Is the imagined alternative, the comparison level for alternatives from Thibault and Kelly's framework, one that's actually been tested against something real? Or is it still wearing the untested shine of an idea that's never had to survive an ordinary Tuesday? Is the fear currently loudest in the room the hot, vivid fear of a bad action, or the quiet, compounding cost of an inaction? That Gilovich and Mech's research suggests is actually more likely to be the version of this decision you're still carrying in 10 years. And underneath all of this sits the specific insight from Hechtlinger's research that most decision frameworks miss entirely. Because the future self who lives with this decision doesn't yet exist. No amount of information gathered in advance will fully resolve the uncertainty. Their research, along with the broader literature it builds on, suggests something more modest and more honest than certainty is actually available. Not knowing for certain, but understanding as clearly as possible which specific forces are operating and choosing with full awareness of that structure, rather than mistaking one loud force, the recent peak, the untested alternative, the fear of the hot regret, for the entire picture. So this was never actually a decision with a hidden correct answer waiting to be found. Through more thought, more lists, more advice from people who never had to live inside it, it's a decision that changes the person making it, evaluated using tools built for decisions that don't. That isn't a reason to stop trying to decide well. It's the reason the attempt has to look different. Honest about which forces are pulling, honest about the version of you currently doing the pulling, and honest, above all, about the fact that not deciding was never actually the safer option. It was simply the version of this decision being made without you.